This is Between Classes, a Qurtuba Islamic Academy production. Coming up in this episode.
I've got many traits. Humility is not one of them. When opportunity meets preparation, you have success. And I was saying outrageous things, that if anyone had the footage of that, it would be catastrophic. And I decided early on that I was going to be the drug dealer, not the drug user.
This part of the podcast, I think, is going to be when they got the captions, watch to the end.
The thing is, everything Andrew Tate has done, the Prophet ﷺ has done on a higher level.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to all our listeners out there to another episode of Between Classes by Qurtuba Islamic Academy. My name is Mohammed Hijab, your host of today's podcast. And alhamdulillah, I am joined by a special guest today. An international guest, a well-known individual who has a lot of academic achievements, currently completing a PhD, multiple masters as well in Islamic studies, theology, history. And he's also a co-founder of Sapience Institute. We have with us Mohammed Hijab. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalam, how are you? You okay?
Alhamdulillah, I can't complain. And how's your journey been so far in South Africa?
It's been good. Hospitality has been fantastic with the people. And it's really interesting to see the culture of the South African people.
Mm. What particularly stood out in the culture?
It's interesting because there are traits of South Africa which seem Western, like the institutional structure and stuff. But obviously there are traits which are strongly African as well. Mm. And then you've got, the racial divide is very interesting. Yeah. I mean, considering the fact, obviously, it's post-apartheid and stuff, but you still have areas which are like predominantly black, areas which are predominantly, you guys call them colored or whatever, areas which are predominantly Asian or Indian, let's say, we'll call them Indian, whatever. Interesting. For me, it's interesting anyway, how that looks. It's very unique. It is very unique, I think. In a lot of these European countries, you'll find that, the nations or Muslim nations that come, people from those nations are ex-colonized nations. So obviously Pakistan was colonized by England or the British Empire. And the same thing applies for a lot of the other nations. If you look at France, for instance, you see a lot of Algerians there. Obviously there was annexation of Algeria. What does stand out in Europe is Germany, because there are a lot of Turkish people there. Turkey wasn't colonized by Germany. So that's one of the exceptions, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure the more you travel, the more you see different places. It's always fascinating to see how all of these variables play and actually come out and express themselves in society.
Yeah, sure. And as I say, I think South Africa has a very, very unique context, and it's very interesting as well. One more thing I would say actually about this is that how the socioeconomic situation has played out in Johannesburg and Pretoria area. Two things in particular. One of them is that the Indian Muslim population are doing very well academically. In fact, I think they do rank in the top 10. A lot of the schools rank in the top 10 of the best schools in the country. And in addition to that, socioeconomically, they're not doing very badly either in terms of the wealth of the kind of. So that's interesting because there is a narrative which is pushed in Western spaces, which is that wherever you find Muslim people in a majority non-Muslim population, you find criminality increasing, delinquency increasing, and lack of education. And I think in many ways, some areas, of course, if you go to Cape Town, potentially the situation is different for historical reasons. I mean, a lot of them were ex-slaves and so on, and all these kind of things. But you find it's a mix of things happening. And so it's difficult to pinpoint the Muslim population, say this is the reason, and ascribe that to Islam, for example, or the Islamic religion. So these distinctions are interesting to be made.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. So I think today we wanted to just speak more about your history and maybe give motivation to our learners, because a lot of people hear Mohammed Hijab. I mean, it's a popular figure. We aspire to be like him, but we don't know where he started out, where did Mohammed Hijab actually begin the journey. And we might think, okay, such a high place to reach. But if maybe we realize that there was also a journey behind it, we can also we can at least aspire to be, maybe reach that level.
Yeah,
So
I don't think it's as high as low as you think it is. I mean, I've got many traits. Humility is not one of them. So if usually people compliment me, I take it and add to it, usually or something, or embellish it maybe. But the truth of the matter is, there's not really much going on in terms of, you mentioned a few academic achievements. There are a lot of people who have done, a few academic achievements in the world today. I think what stood out for me is just opportunities. It really is just opportunities. And Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, he interestingly, and I think very wisely, said that when opportunity meets preparation, you have success. And it's just a fact that I have been placed in a certain place, in a certain time, with certain opportunities that have allowed me to make certain strides in the online space, which many other people in the world won't be able to do. And I ascribe that all to opportunity. Like, for example, one of the main reasons why people know who I am is because of Speaker's Corner. A discussion. Speaker's Corner is a 5-minute walk from my house, or 10-minute walk from my house. Okay, so it's much easier for me to get there, for example. That's an opportunity that I had that the majority of Muslim population didn't have. Speaker's Corner was one of the main reasons why I was able to create this kind of reality TV show, if you like, on the internet, which was a real situation. Storylines were happening and all those kind of things. But also the opportunities to study and learn, which is, for many of you guys, have the same opportunity. Because ilm, alhamdulillah, especially Islamic knowledge, it's been made accessible for people, especially in the age of the internet. So I ascribe it all to opportunities, honestly. And I don't think if you have a plan in place, they say if you fail to plan to fail. If you have a plan in place, and you're strategic about that plan, then I do believe you can get a lot done in this life.
So you spoke about Speaker's Corner and how the opportunity was there because of your distance there. Do you remember the first time you ever went there to debate with someone, to engage with someone? What was it like?
I went there when I was a child. Yeah, maybe 14 years old or something. And I was saying outrageous things that if anyone had the footage of that, would be catastrophic. but I mean, I went there obviously after that, and then cameras started to be put into the equation. It was a natural development, honestly. It really was a natural development. But I always had in mind that I wanted to do something Islamic. I did have a kind of a vein for it. I had a feeling that I had a religious impulse. And that religious impulse was being expressed in the modern age with as much kind of vehemency as I could express it. And I realized something early on, that knowledge is not enough in the age of entertainment. I realized that you had to mix in an aspect of entertainment. And I think, to be honest with you, that's probably the reason why, one of the other reasons why there's been a bit of kind of an ascendancy here, because social media is like a game, like anything else, right? It's an animal that needs to be tamed. It needs to be fed in a certain way, it needs to be dealt with a certain way, it needs to be tamed in a certain way. Once you understand what people need on social media, people are social media addicts, effectively. And I decided early on that I was going to be the drug dealer, not the drug user, if you want. But I said, I'm going to leverage this for the sake of the religion of Islam. And I understood how the situation works. So I put a bit of entertainment, a little showmanship with a little bit of Islamic knowledge, a little bit of academic knowledge, and create a product. And to be honest with you, I think we need to think about the most effective ways with the opportunities that we have, that we can. Because I think everybody has something which everyone else doesn't have. Like, for instance, there are people I've met here in South Africa that can speak languages. Like Zulu language, for instance. That's a very specialist ability. If I could speak Zulu language, I would leverage that. If I could speak Urdu language or Hindi language or Gujarati language, I would leverage that. What's the point of learning a language from your parents or otherwise, which you're not going to make maximal use of, to be honest with you? So the idea of leveraging your pre-existing skills, because Allah has given opportunities to. has given certain things that he hasn't given other people. And if you're able to kind of put them together and say, okay, this is what I have that other people don't have, I can create a product out of it. And that product it's not necessarily, I'm not talking about business product here, I'm talking about, from the Islamic perspective, there's a niche I can fill in to make kalimatullah al-ulya, to make Allah's word the highest. And if you have the religious impulse, you want that to happen. So how can you leverage your pre-existing skills to make kalimatullah al-ulya? And that's what you need to think about. Everyone needs to think about that. You'd be surprised that most people have these opportunities and these skills and these abilities that has been bestowed upon them, but they don't leverage them. So I think that's what it is.
Like, I think you use successfully social media and all of these technological tools and you spoke about how it's not just the knowledge, it's also the skills you require. You have to package it, make it into a product. And the nature of people is that we live in a dopamine world. Everyone just wants to scroll in there.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, you have a sincere intention, but other people don't necessarily have that. And we find it there when it comes to Islamic knowledge in it. And I think that's something which all of us battle with. How do we sift through the authentic knowledge and the unauthentic knowledge, the invalid knowledge, which outwardly the packaging seems nice. How do you sift through that?
Well, I mean, the thing is, there are things which the religion of Islam has preserved. For example, the Quran. If someone starts memorizing the Quran, they learn the Arabic language and learning what the words mean of the Quran, you can't go wrong. Allah has preserved the Quran. Their meanings are not meant for philosophers or elites. They're meant for the average person. And the Quran, yes, if anyone starts with it, and you can spend an entire lifetime just understanding the words of the Quran and understanding it's an ocean. It really is. So there's no more authentic knowledge than the knowledge of the Quran. And the Prophet Muhammad said in the hadith, the best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. And the Prophet Muhammad said about learning the Quran and reciting it, he says, Al-Mahir bil-Quran مع السفرة الكرام البررة والذي يتتعتع فيه وهو عليه شاق فله أجران. The one who is proficient in reading the Quran is with the high esteemed angels, and the one who finds it difficult, he gets 2 rewards. So the Prophet Muhammad said in another hadith, he said that, ألا أقول ألف لام ميم حرف ولكن ألف حرف ولام حرف وميم حرف وللحسنة عشرة أمثالها. I don't say ألف لام ميم is 1 letter, but ألف is 1 letter, lam is 1 letter, mim is 1 letter. And for each letter you get 10 rewards. Meaning there's so much incentive here, and I can continue going on about this, but there's so much incentive of just learning the Quran, just literally learning, memorizing it, understanding it, putting it into your daily life. And I think this is a key point. It's about creating habits. Aristotle said that you are your habits. You effectively are your habits. You're a creature of habits, but you are your habits. Now there are, in the self-help industry, there's all kinds of books, Atomic Habits and these kind of things that people write. But it's about creating habits relating to your dunya and your deen, but specifically about the Quran. Where you memorize the Quran or do muraja'ah of what you've already memorized the Quran, or try and go through some understanding of tafsir or translation of the Quran. If you have that as your part of your daily life, there's no better dhikr than this. There's nothing better than that, I'm sorry to say. Because the Quran, it's just the words of Allah. He's revealed it down to the Prophet Muhammad, and there's nothing better than it. There's no words of philosophers. There's no words of self-help gurus. There's no YouTube video that you can watch. There's no podcast you can listen to. But the Quran, because the Quran is the revelation that we believe has been revealed to the last messenger. It's the words of Allah, of God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Instructions, wisdom, stories, everything that you need. So if the most authentic thing is the Quran, after that is the seerah of the Prophet or the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And going through hadith is not a difficult thing. So I would say, if you go through the books of hadith have been translated now into English language, for example, and you can read some of the hadith every day, you read 2-3 hadith, and so it's amazing. It's beautiful, it's fantastic. And of course, if you want to take things further, then you can learn a madhab in fiqh. For example, the Hanafi madhab, very popular and practical madhab. There's lots of books and teachers in Cape Town and in Johannesburg and Pretoria, in Durban, and around the world, in the Western world. A lot of people, Dar al-Ulooms, that teach the Hanafi madhab, and they teach, from the beginning and so on. This is fantastic. Because you're learning how to worship Allah according to one bona fide, legitimate method. And the Ummah has agreed on this method. The whole Ummah has agreed. This is one of the great scholars and awliya. In fact, he's part of the Salaf. Some say he's a tabi'i, but in fact, he was a tabi'i because he met Anas ibn Malik, who was Abu Hanifa. So, to follow a madhab like this, have the Quran, have the Hadith, have a bit of tazkiyah in your life as well. What some people refer to as tasawwuf. A bit of tazkiyah is someone removing the diseases from the heart, having a program with this. If you have a nice balance of these things, and you create habits with all of those things, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with these kind of things.
It comes down to the fundamental aspects which we just fail to implement, like as you said, the habits. But unfortunately, many youngsters get caught up in the bad habits.
Yes.
And that's the problem. When once it becomes a neural pathway, it becomes a road a person is leading to, and then it just becomes destructive for them. And I think that's, as you said, it's coming back to the Quran, coming back to the simple aspects of your life. But those are the things you need to hold on to. In one of our previous podcasts, one of our learners actually told us that the Quran is like a life jacket. No matter what the person is going through, it can be even in the deepest of oceans, but it will still keep you afloat. And I think that's coming to the same point as well. Like, go back to the sources which we have, and that's where you find your peace.
Absolutely. Look, it's an anchorage. It's a spiritual spinal cord, right? The Quran really is, if everyone just had a portion of the Quran where the Quran even states in many different parts, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not think over the Quran, or are on their hearts seals or locks? For example, the Quran says, وَرَتِّلْ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, and slowly recite the Quran, a recitation. وَقَرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ, and read what is easy for you to read from it. There's so much incentive in the Quran and Sunnah about just putting this aspect into your life, which is the Quran itself. There's so much incentive that if you don't have it in your life, and you have all these other things, then you're really heading for destruction. If someone truly believes these are words from God, then why wouldn't they put it as part of why wouldn't they prioritize it? Do you know what I mean? So the Quran should be one of the, to use the term, atomic habits that someone, why not? It really develops it, learning the language of it, learning exactly what's being said, what tafsir is what. It's interesting. It is interesting. There's a lot of juice in this ilm. It's not a dry science. Learning tafsir, learning this. There's lots of people nowadays in the English-speaking world who have great efforts translating the Quran or doing lectures, like Nauman Ali Khan, for example, in America, has done various lectures on translating the Quran and stuff like that. Many of them are really fantastic, actually. I've heard them myself, for example. Listening to something like that or something in the native tongue and podcasts and stuff on the Quran. What does this mean? What does Allah mean by that? Who is a greater advice giver than Allah? It's really as simple as that, to be honest with you. So having the Quran, having the Sunnah, reading the Seerah, rereading it. It's not just you do it one time and let's say I've read this book. No, you keep rereading it in different ways, maybe different seerahs of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and that kind of thing. But also, live it. Because obviously the Quran wants you to live it as much as possible. And so, I would say these are things to incorporate into one's daily life.
Okay, definitely. So I think that's definitely in terms of like the Quran, the Sunnah, going to those things. You also started, when you spoke about how you use your skills, your passion to give da'wah and to reach a community, a niche within the Islamic field. And I think within the South African setting, we see the need that people need to stand up, defend it from Islam from a philosophical perspective, from a rational perspective in understanding. However, a lot of scholars are maybe hesitant that I don't necessarily have the sufficient knowledge, just now I go out there and do more damage than good. What advice would you give to people like that?
Not everyone needs to do this. Look, I feel like everyone needs to have a basic tool set for how to deal with certain things. For example, the Trinity, Christianity. Because the thing is, every child, if you want to be a father or a mother of a child in today's age, and the education system is against you, mainstream media is against you, social media is against you, Hollywood is against you, Bollywood is against you, all these things are against you. And they are very creative. I have to say, if you watch some of these Netflix programs, don't think that any of these are benign or mundane or neutral. Like I'm sure many of the people that are listening to this have watched so many series on Netflix. And most of them, if not all of them, or the vast majority of them, they have ideological baggage. They have a liberal baggage. They have a feminist baggage. The first episode might not contain this, but it'll be a slow, subtle encroachment. So this is actually a war. This is an intellectual war. Everyone needs to be equipped to some level. I believe this, especially in today. If you want to live in today's society and you want to protect your children, it's like an intellectual inoculation. It's like a vaccination. Okay, you need to have as much skills as to be able to protect yourself and your children from this. And that's why the Sapience Institute, obviously, for example, that's what we specialize in. Effectively, we're trying to create packages for the mainstream Muslim, for the laity, that they will take it, or the educated class, and be able to defend themselves and their communities from these kinds of encroachments. But of course, you will have people who want to specialize and say, look, I want to do this. I want to take it more seriously. I want to be a knowledge producer, not just a knowledge consumer. And for those individuals, yes, I mean, there are lots of things that need to be investigated and specialized in, and people will have different skills in different areas. But now it's an ideological issue. So, for example, someone might want to do political philosophy so that they can refute it. Someone might want to do philosophy of religion, so they can refute atheism. Someone might want to do philosophy of mind so that they can refute new ideas of AI, and that the AI is like a human being and like a robot is like a human, and these ideas. Or someone might want to do history so they can refute Orientalist claims, okay, of, for example, Islamic history was barbaric and all of these kind of things. There's so much that you can specialize in and that you can do. One thing I would say as a prerequisite to all of that is you have to really, be strong with the Quran and the Sunnah and your Aqidah and the creed and these kind of things, and be spiritually mature and have a backing. If you have that backing and you feel passionate about it, then we don't need everyone to do this, to specialize. But if a few people do it or some people do it, then fine, it's well and good. But then do not just become a scholar or an academic, because being an academic, I can tell you for a fact, is not going to be effective enough. You need to leverage your academic skills in popular ways in which it can be disseminated, whether it's through entertainment or creativity or through story writing or storytelling, books, whatever it may be. You need to be creative. There needs to be a creative element, because if we don't do that, we won't survive. There are many academics here in South Africa, all over the world, who are not effective because they don't know how to speak, they don't know how to communicate, they don't know how to teach, they don't know how to entertain, they don't know how to get the audience. So what I'm saying is, if dissemination is your end goal and what you want to do, then you have to try and learn both. If not, if you want to just knowledge produce, then you have to think of a system of how this is going to be effective, how is it going to be disseminated, how is it going to be promulgated, and so on. So you need to really think about what you want to do. But if your intention is clear, that we go back to لِتَكُونَ كَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ الْعُلْيَا, that Allah's word is the highest, that you want to see Allah's word as the highest, then I believe Allah will make things easier for you. Because وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Whoever has fear of Allah, Allah will provide an exit for them and will provide for them from places they never thought existed. I believe this. And I actually believe that the metaphysical realm has a big part to play. When someone involves in da'wah, you start getting dreams, you start this and that. Maybe the angels come and help you. Wallahi, I mean this in the most sincerest of ways. I genuinely, strongly believe in this stuff. I don't believe that we're in control of everything like this. We can plan as much as we can, but then there is a divine intervention through the angels and these kind of. I believe in that.
We're first time meeting.
Yes.
It's an honor to meet you. I'm glad this part of the podcast, I think, is going to be the, when they got the captions, watch to the end. The children of the school, they are, most of them, the boys especially, fanatics of the renowned Andrew Tate. And Andrew Tate is the leader now at the moment. Really? Not leader, but like, their role model in terms of achieving manlyhood and, being manly and strong, and you need to have affirmations, and you need to be on that level. So just from a teacher's perspective now, knowing these kids, they probably want to know from you, listening to this podcast, like, what was the interaction like? How did it happen? What's your thoughts on him and all his ideologies?
I think he's an authentic human being. You know, I had connections with him and interactions with him privately and publicly. And I think he's an open book, actually. I don't think he's faking anything. I do think that this is really his, in a sense, this is who he is. I mean, of course, he's got a personality, like on-screen personality, like almost a WWE character that he can turn into. But I don't think he's an inauthentic human being. I think he's authentic. I think he's an open book. Obviously, the كل إنسان يؤخذ منه ويرد عليه. I mean, Imam Malik said that everybody, you take something from them and you reject something from them. And then he pointed at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, إلا صاحب هذا القبر, except for the person in this qabr or this particular grave. And he pointed at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you want ta'assi or to have uswa, which means a leader or an exemplar, then there's nothing better than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And don't forget, Andrew Tate is following this. Like Andrew Tate, to become a better person, he's following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it makes no sense to follow Andrew Tate when he is following someone greater than
he's
he
getting
is.
guidance.
You might as well follow who he's following, right?
Yeah.
So, because the thing is, everything Andrew Tate has done, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has done on a higher level. Like, for example, Andrew Tate was a kickboxer, right? For example, for the sake of argument, great kickboxer. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam fought actual wars with swords and won those wars and conquered actual places. And then all of these people became his followers.
Subhanallah.
So if you're talking about masculinity, you can, okay, Andrew Tate had a few women here and there, whatever. But the Prophet ﷺ had 9 women. That is not, sorry to say, like these kind of relationships that these people do. These were actual love-based relationships that, you know, he was able to maintain all of these relationships, all these families at the same time. So if it comes to the familial setting, if it comes to the military setting, there's nothing better than the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And that's why Andrew Tate, he looked at Islam, he looked at the character of the Prophet, and he embraced Islam because he saw something greater than he was.
So in terms of steadiness and stability, in terms of the children's ideology, it starts off with I want to be Iron Man. Iron Man is the main Avenger.
Yes.
Then you go on to everyone wanted to be like Ronaldo and Messi because of the World Cup. And then Andrew Tate came along, and then like everybody's just changing what they want, their ideologies and what they want to be and all of that. And I guess that's kids. But some advice with regards to staying steady. You've got an example. Your role model is Rasulullah. Some advice with regards to that, how to keep them onto it.
I think it's the responsibility of the elders and the scholars and the du'at to really tell the story of the Prophet properly. Because unfortunately now, and especially in the Western or English-speaking world, we have pacified the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in order to acquiesce to, for example, liberal criticisms of the seerah, and that's come at an expense. For example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Laqad ji'tukum bidh-dhabh." I mean, this is in a particular context, just to not be taken out of context. It says, "I've come to you with slaughter." I mean, surely, I mean, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said so many great things, merciful things to people, but he also was very stern at times. There was also that warrior aspect. Some people have removed the warrior from the character of the Prophet ﷺ to pacify his character for political and social reasons. The result has been young men who have that innate want, if you like, to be a warrior, will look at other people who they consider fulfilling that particular criterion. And what I'm saying is that if we tell the story of the Prophet properly, without editing it to suit the liberal and feminist agenda of the 21st century Western hegemonic power, because we are weak, then I think that the vacuum would have been not even been there, really. We wouldn't see many Muslims gravitating to that as much as we're seeing. But the thing is, you're seeing many scholars even, and so many du'at not speak in a manner which is confident, do things which are confident, act in a manner which is masculine. And that's why Andrew Tate, he actually does these things, and many men are going to say, oh, that's what I want to be. Why do you think, I mean, at the time of the Prophet, people followed him? Of the many things people said about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a coward was never one of them. Even now, I've been doing apologetics for this many years, right? I'm speaking to people about Islam and whatever, and defending this and that. I've never heard one non-Muslim say to me the Prophet was a coward. It's never happened. Do you know what I mean? It's never happened. Because they know what they're going to say. He was a coward, but he was a vicious man at the same time. What are they really going to say about this, right? So what I'm saying is not one person has come to it. Even a lay person on Speaker's Corner. Nobody has come and said, well, your Prophet was a coward. Do you know what I mean? No one has. So what I'm saying is, if we tell the story properly, okay, about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the people, the Muslim youngsters and youth, will be able to follow this. Remember, people are visual creatures, especially men. We're visual creatures. So if we see a man who's very confident and stuff like that, it's natural. I don't think it's too unnatural, to be honest with you. I don't blame them too much for this. However, having said that, obviously there's caveats and disclaimers. I mean, especially the hedonistic aspect, which especially before he became Muslim, all these women around him and stuff like that, and the hedonistic stuff, haram issues. And obviously we have to say this is haram, and this is not what it means to be a man. A body count is not what it means to be having intercourse with 1,000 women is not what it means to be a man. Otherwise the rabbit would outdo all of us. Or the donkey. And the donkey would be the greatest man of all, right? If it was about body counts, then there's no being the donkey. Do you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, I mean, what it means to be a man is really to uphold, to be a person of your word. To be fair to Andrew Tate, he says these kind of things as well. To be a person of your word, to be upright character, to be a strong individual, to be resilient, not to be a coward. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ told us, "Sharru ma fi rajuli." The worst thing in a man is bukhlun hala. Yeah, is being stingy. So being generous, therefore, you see, is being part of a man. And jubnun khala, and being a coward. So to be brave is being part of a man as well. It's true. And so if our people said this, and if we were told, if we had khutab on bravery and masculinity or on protection and these kind of things, then the vacuum wouldn't have been there. It's our fault, really.
It's our fault. I mean, even if we speak about it, we might speak about it, it comes out verbally, but from our actions, we fail. In terms of the confidence we have, maybe when you're speaking about it, the way we speak about it, the way we come across as well, we fail in that regard. So even if we may be imparting the message, no one's going to catch the message. And it comes back to our starting of our conversation, with also the way you package it. If you're just going to speak about it, but you're not saying it in the correct manner, you're not living up to that standard, people are going to turn away. And they're going to find other sources. Absolutely. And then you to blame. No one else is to blame.
Absolutely.
Jazakallah khairan for the podcast. We really appreciate it. Inshallah, it's not the last time you're going to be with us. Inshallah. We'll be back in South Africa and back on our podcast, inshallah.
Thanks so much.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
We could not have made this audio adventure possible without the incredible contribution of Maulana Aslam Raja, Appa Amira Hijab, and the brilliant minds of the Qurtuba Islamic Academy podcast team. Remember to hit the subscribe button and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. This has been a Qurtuba Islamic Academy production. Stay tuned for more.